We're Zooming. Thank you. Good afternoon. Before we begin, I'd like to just make a couple of housekeeping notes. Our workshop is here today in the conference chambers as well as online. So we'll be filming on Zoom, and this will be put on the city's website for the future. So anything that you hear and you might want to rehear or you want to suggest a friend listen, we will have a link on our Pleasant Hill uh, Commission on Aging website. The bathrooms are out the door and located to the left. Okay, out the door to the left. I'd like to acknowledge some of our commissioners that are with us today. And I just realized they're outside, so they can't even stand up. They're working. So I myself, Lorna Van Akron, I'm on the Commission on Aging here for Pleasant Hill, and I also serve as the city's appointed representative for the Advisory Council on Aging for the County of Contra Costa. We also have in the back helping us register Vicki Pease and also Marianne Giese. So those are our three Pleasant Hill commissioners that are with us today. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our session on proactive planning for aging. I really want to, well, the whole panel here wants to applaud you for each being here because successful aging really does start with planning. And planning ahead can be challenging since you don't know what kind of issues you are going to come across as you age. But taking the time like you are today to understand the valuable resources available to you in our community can make all the difference in the world when a crisis does come up. Each person on our panel will provide about a 10-minute overview. We ask that you hold your questions to the end. We promise to answer your questions. I would like to ask that you keep your questions general in nature and know that if there's specific questions, you might be able to speak to somebody one-on-one after our presentation. I'm honored to introduce our panel of members here today. I've had the experience and pleasure of working with each one of these numerous times over the last 10 years, and I really appreciate and thank you for your participation, and I'm really excited for you to hear what they have to share today. Our first panel member is Francesca Vogel. She is the director of Hillendale Home Care and has spent over 30 years helping clients and their families deal with the complexity of aging. She is known for her comprehensive concierge style approach and is dedicated to helping seniors age in place with dignity, safety, and independence. Francisca is also passionate about enriching the lives of older people. And on her off time, she takes her two miniature horses, Snuggles and Cinnabon, to senior communities in our area to bring joy into the lives of people living in assisted living. Our next member is Brian, who is the founder of Care Placement Advisors, and he specializes in assisting families as they transition from their home to an assisted living environment due to downsizing, health, or safety concerns. He helps families identify the most suitable living arrangement based on their care needs, their socialization needs, their budget, and location. Brian's goal is to empower families with the information they need to make informed decisions with confidence and peace of mind. Our next panel member is Brian O'Toole. He has been a trusted estate planning elder law in Walnut Creek for over 15 years, helping individuals and families create comprehensive estate plans, navigating Medi-Cal benefits, managing trust and probate matters. He is the go-to resource for ensuring that you have the right legal documents in place for a smooth aging process. Outside of his legal practice, Brian stays busy with his wife and three daughters, navigating softball and soccer. And then you have me, Lorna Van Ackeren. I am the founder of Aging Care Concierge. I'm a certified geriatric care manager, and my mission is to enhance the quality of life for older adults and their families as they navigate the challenge of aging. I understand that every individual has unique needs, and I'm committed to providing holistic, personalized care tailored to each person and their family. My goal is to support families in making the best possible decisions for their loved ones' care, ensuring comfort, dignity, and peace of mind. So I think you can see we have a theme going on here. We want to help our senior community age in place with dignity, confidence, independence, and safety. So each panel member is going to speak about what they do. You can think about the questions you have, and then we will have a robust question and answer period after our presentation. Francesca, would you like to start?
Oh, there we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So I feel so big and important up here. Oh, you have something else?
We have T-coil for hearing built into the chairs. We also have assisted hearing devices if we need. And please turn off your cell phones. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. So good afternoon again, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to see some gentlemen here today. This is so important. Again, Francesca Vogel, Hillendale Home Care, and I have Jill Cabaceres. She is my general manager at our Walnut Creek branch here. And, you know, I guess I have to start way back here. 33 years is a long time to do home care, and I started when I was like 20. No, not so much. Approaching 58 this year, and I'm happy. I'm mature. I'd have to say I'm a mature woman. A little gal yesterday in the store said to me, she said, "You're so pretty." And I'm like, gosh, you can just take those compliments and you're just like, it feels so good when somebody makes you feel good about yourself as we age, right? And that's the thing, is aging in place, and we all want to stay home, and we all want to be with our loved ones and not have to maybe go to a senior community, whatever that is. And again, my passions for the home care space, it starts way back. I worked in John Muir in my 20s, nurse, cardiovascular tech, and was raised by my grandparents in Walnut Creek. And my passion and love for seniors as well as animals came from them. I'm an only child. I have a living mother. I've been through hospice with loved ones. And really my passion is to help others. And bringing the animals and bringing my two miniature horses, Cinnabon and Snuggles, has been really super fun. And it really just brings so much joy. I also have a dog, Blaze, that I bring around as well. But, you know, just getting back to what we do is really so important. And how many of you here today have ever experienced having a caregiver or a companion or somebody helping you in the home? Anybody? Okay, that's great. So you guys are in the planning modes, right? So we're planning what that may look like and preparing to understand what services are available in the community, and, you know, and what levels of care you may be able to receive at home. Just know that you can receive every level of care at home. You can stay home, you can have caregivers in the home, you can have nurses come in, you can have hospice come in, you can have home health come in. There's so many levels of care that can be, even a physician can come to your home. And there's just so much, you know, people like Lorna, again, and all these two gentlemen as well. You can receive these services at home. And not everybody may want to stay home. With that being said, majority of the caregiving piece is, for most agencies here in this community, is in the home environment. You sometimes see people aging in place like the Carlton. Anybody live in a senior community? Anybody here? You all live at home. Great. Okay. So again, if you go to one of those places down the street, I'm going to say the Carlton, lovely place. A lot of times you're there and you think that's the last stop, right? You think that, oh man, I'm good. I'm going to get the services there, the meals, the medications, everything is set for me there. Well, what sometimes happens in those environments, you have a bump. You break your hip, you trip, you fall. Believe me, I've had some trip and falls and my own fractures. So I know what that's like. And so you may need a caregiver, a companion to kind of help support you in that environment as well. But for the most part, our services and caregiving is in the home environment. That could be as little as 4 hours once a week up to 24/7 care. So I have a little lady last week, a couple weeks ago, I get a call from John Muir Emergency Room. Francesca, I've got this sweet lady. She was on the bike trail and on the Iron Horse Trail, and some kids, they had their bikes, the electric bikes, they knocked her down. She fractured her face, all her facial, she fractured her nose, her eye, she has a subdural hematoma. This woman was really banged up. It didn't warrant for her to be admitted to the hospital, but she has a fractured arm and whatnot. So hospital calls me, John Muir, Francesca, she needs a caregiver. She lives alone. She has nobody there with her at her home. Her son lives in Utah. How many of you have your adult children that live out of state? So again, this woman had nobody. She had nobody here locally. Francesca, can you pick her up from the ER? Can you have a caregiver bring her home? Absolutely. What does she need? And, we provided 24/7 care to her until her son came into town. And what that meant is we were there, my caregivers were there to help her with her meals, her medications, driving her to her next doctor's visit because she had to have another surgery on her face. My caregivers were there to do her laundry and her light housekeeping, and are there to provide, and feed her cat. They're there to provide that support. So wherever you are at that moment, maybe you're going to have a hip surgery, maybe you're going to have a knee surgery, and maybe you don't have somebody here to help you. That's what in-home care is, a caregiver to help support you to be able to stay at home. These services, unfortunately, are not covered under your traditional Medicare. So Medicare doesn't cover in-home caregiving services. What they do cover is home health services. And that's after an event at a hospital. You have a stroke, you go in because you have surgery, and they're going to send you out a home health nurse and a physical therapist. That's something totally different. What is a covered benefit under home care is somebody that has long-term care insurance. How many have long-term care insurance? Okay, nice. Nice, that's great. So that will cover, usually they're going to have an elimination period, 30 to 60 days, sometimes 90 days. But again, that will allow you to have a caregiver coming in. Usually they're going to have a daily amount as well that they provide. And so all these services are unfortunately not covered only under long-term care. Like I mentioned, they're out of pocket. So I'm sure you all wonder, what does this cost, right? So cost is going to be anywhere depending on agencies. We're insured, we're bonded, we're licensed. We have 5 client care managers that do that initial care plan to really determine what you need. Not every agency is so extensive and thorough and detailed like we are, and comprehensive. I like that term that Lorna used. We're very comprehensive. We go out, my client care managers do an assessment. We determine what your needs are. We're matching a caregiver that you like. What's important to you? I don't want somebody wearing shoes in my house, and I don't want chatty Kathy, right? You get to pick these things and people that you like and that have similar interests as you as well, and you can have a conversation with and be able to engage them too, because they're there helping you in your home. This is the privacy of your home. So again, costs can be anywhere from $42 up to $48 an hour. And this is general. This is competitive out in the community. Because like I said, there's lots of home care agencies. We're one of the #1 agencies here in the community, I'm so proud to say. I have great staff. Myself and Jill and Jesse took on this agency 2.5 years ago. It was started by Bridget, who was a nurse. And, this was our dream, is to be providing care our way. We do things our way. We're not a corporate conglomerate. We're boots on the ground. All of our staff are here. We're here to help you and really to match that caregiver according to your needs. I had the honor just recently to care for my own doctor's mother-in-law. That's an honor. Like, that's an honor. And these are the kind of people, when you've been in the community a long time, you get to help. And I was honored. You're asking me to care for her. And, that's what we're here to do, is help people age in place. You may not need us, but maybe you have a bump and like this little lady. She's probably going to need us for a few months, but she's 82 and strong, and she wants to get back to walking on the Iron Horse Trail and doing her thing. But right now, she needs that care and that support. So typically caregivers, like I said, they come from a background of they're nursing assistants, home health aides. They've had to have experience working in this, and they have to go through the state registry. So they're not just willy-nilly somebody out from off the street. They have to clearance through us, through the Department of Justice, the FBI. They have to clear. So they are cleared to work for us. And that's really important to know too. And I feel like it's so you can hire somebody off of Nextdoor, or you can hire somebody off of, from a friend of a friend, but you really need to make sure that these people are trained and that they have supervision, and that you actually have somebody, in case somebody calls off sick, you have a private caregiver helping you. What happens if that caregiver gets sick? You have an agency you're with, we replace that caregiver. So I feel like, where's my time here? What do we got? Oh, good. See, that was good. So again, thank you all for coming. I'm here to answer any more questions. We're gonna move on to the next, and we'll save those questions to the end. And I hope whatever I haven't covered, please save your question, and I'm happy to answer. Thank you so much.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Brian Riddle. My agency is called Care Placement Advisors, and we are a local referral agency designed, as Lorna said earlier, to help someone who's looking to move into a community find the most appropriate community. So when we start to do that, our first instinct typically is to go online, right? So we want to see what's out there. We kind of fish a little bit. So what placement is not, this is what I actually like to start with, is not going on to the sites, the websites, the internet, meaning agencies that we see on TV, maybe A Place for Mom, for example, or caring.com, for example. They're big companies, they're out there, and they're advertising this product. But the product that they're offering is actually interesting in the sense that they're actually referring to communities that they have never set foot in. They don't look at citations and violations. They don't know if a community is on probation. They don't know the turnover, the resident to ratio, caregiver to resident ratio staffing, for example. What they do is they capture your information, right? So it's going to be either your phone number or your email address, and they will start to bombard you with phone calls, and they will inundate you. And the goal is to get you in to do a tour, correct? So that's probably the last thing that you want to do if you can. The second you start giving out your personal information, you are actually stuck working with those agencies. When you work with a local referral agent, and there's many, many good local ones around in our general area, we're feet on the street. The goal is to actually go into the home or hospital setting, skilled nursing setting, and do an assessment. So yeah, we're going to be looking at your care needs. Do you need help with bathing, toileting, grooming? What does that look like? But we take it a step further. We want to understand, what did you like to engage in? What purpose can we provide you at the community that's going to best match your needs, okay? But then we're looking at price, and just like home care, the assisted living communities, the memory care communities, and what we call board and care communities, they can also be pretty spendy as well. So sometimes that means the conversation might change just a little bit. And we might say, hey, Walnut Creek's a pretty expensive zip code. You don't have family in the general area. What if we were to go, for example, out to Brentwood? What if we could save just a little bit of money so that your loved one can age in place longer without having to move? What the local agents do is we try to tour with our families. Sometimes, particularly when I'm working with my hospice families, the families aren't necessarily looking at the correct things. As an example, recently I toured an individual, the daughter, and her focus was, oh my gosh, this home is so gorgeous. This was the home my mom essentially grew up in. And that's nice. Mom's not going to actually be in the front yard looking at the home. So the conversation was like, let's talk about the care on the inside. Let's focus what they do and why we're actually here. Why is this the most appropriate location for your mom? When we drive past these large assisted living communities, memory cares, myself included, before I got into this industry, I assumed that they all did the exact same thing, but they don't. And a lot of families don't know that once they move into them, and then we end up being stuck. So a few examples would be some communities don't do what we call a two-person assist. Some don't utilize what we call a Hoyer. Some do not do a pureed or a mechanical soft diet. That might be important if you're a Parkinson's patient and you're having swallowing issues, right? The one that's the most interesting that caught me off guard is there are actually communities out there when a loved one is in a memory care, they actually don't feed the resident. They're not staffed appropriately in order to spend that much time with their loved one. So when you work with a local referral agent, we're going to know the communities that might make the most sense. And it's not for me to say we can't go to this community. All I do is provide options. So if that community that does not feed the resident towards end of life feels like the best choice for you at that time, all I'm here to do is empower you with information so you can make the best decision for your loved one. We do have different types of communities. The two I want to talk about just quickly would be what we have our large memory cares, all right? But then we have a different care model. They're called boarding cares. Many people are not familiar with that concept. When we transition someone to a large memory care, they're based a little bit more on a social engagement model. More activities, more stimulation, maybe even going out on excursions. When we do a transition into a boarding care, it's licensed the same way. The difference would be they only accept 6 residents in the home. There are 2 caregivers during the day and 1 caregiver at night. What most people don't know is that very few actually have a person awake at night. In fact, maybe 25 to 30% do. So when you work with a local agent, we're able to assist you with making that decision, because my hospice patients who are bedbound who can't reposition, I need them repositioned. If they're wet or soiled in the middle of the night, I need them clean because I'm trying to avoid UTIs and I'm trying to avoid skin breakdown. The challenge with the boarding carers is that they're not a social model. Okay, so there are some that do some activities, but in general, they are designed for people who need high level of care. Maybe they're two-person assist, maybe they're Hoyer, maybe they no longer participate in programs at memory care. So you're spending money to have an activity director, to have a bus in those larger communities, so sometimes the boarding care can make more sense. The cost, all over the map. And they're very expensive. It's private pay, paid for also by long-term care insurance, or a program that we call Aid in Attendance that is offered through the VA for veterans. There are some qualifying factors for that one. The communities have a base rent. So as an example, let's say a 1-bedroom has a base rent of $6,500, but then their nurse is going to go in, do an assessment, and they're going to be looking at care needs. Does your loved one need help with bathing, toileting, grooming, medication management? Those costs will add up on top of that base rent. The base rent provides all of your meals, laundry generally, transportation, and activities. You're not paying for air conditioning, you're not paying your HOA, your property taxes. So life is a little bit simplified with that care model. How am I in time? All right, a few more minutes. When money runs out, that typically becomes a pretty big question. These places are so expensive that the majority of people in our country actually cannot afford them. My family would be in that mix. So if they start to run out of money, we spend down. We have a few other choices out there. If the loved one goes to the hospital, then they transition over to a skilled nursing facility. At that time, and I'll have Brian talk more about it, there's an opportunity that the patient can actually stay there long-term if we get them qualified on Medi-Cal. Now what's happening is a program that we call the Assisted Living Waiver Program. And it's in association with Medi-Cal. So once we spend down, we're straight Medi-Cal. Some of our memory care communities are offering the Assisted Living Waiver Program. So the individual can actually age in place in that memory care. But at the current time, it's not being offered in assisted living. And then we do have a sprinkle of boarding cares that are offering that program as well. So the hope is that more and more communities offer that so that we don't have to find alternative living situations for our loved ones.
Brian, could you talk about assisted living going into memory care, the same facility?
So earlier I was saying that the buildings are all kind of licensed differently, if you will. And they're looking at the risk, the liability factor with our clients who may have a diagnosis of dementia, Alzheimer's. So just because you have a diagnosis of dementia, Alzheimer's, let's say you're not exit seeking, you're not combative, you're not a wanderer, and you're actually incredibly high functioning and quite frankly, very brilliant. Sometimes that individual really is not appropriate. In fact, most of the time I advocate that they do not go into a memory care. I want them participating in the higher level of activities and whatever community they do a transition to. But there are a few communities that once you automatically get that diagnosis of dementia, they pigeonhole you into their memory care area. And on top of that, once you go into their memory care unit, some of them won't allow you to come out even with a loved one to have lunch in the common area. They're all very, very different. So a goal like that would be to find a building who maybe is licensed all memory care, even though they do offer assisted living and memory. The entire building is memory care. They would have a delayed egress door, for example. But once maybe you start needing more navigating, more redirecting, more cueing, prompting, maybe help eating, at that point in time, it's going to make more sense to move to a smaller setting where the caregiver to resident ratio is just a little bit higher, so there's more oversight for you. That's about it. And then on to the fun stuff. This is the legal stuff. We've all been waiting for it.
Well, the saying goes, they save the best for last, but so I don't know if that's true today though. But my name is Brian O'Toole. I'm an estate planning attorney. I have my office right down by Pleasant Hill BART, so it wasn't too far to come today. But I always like to start off, who has a favorite show about lawyers or a legal show? Let me see a hand. Who has a favorite legal show? Yeah. LA Law, very beautiful people, beautiful settings. Yes. Anyone else? Suits. Oh, Meghan Markle, the princess. Yes. Anybody else? Matlock, an oldie but a goodie. Classic and a new. I think they're making new Matlocks, right? The new Matlocks. I'm show you. I usually get a Law and Order or something. Nobody does Law and Order anymore, huh? Oh, here we go. I saw Law and Order. Well, none of those shows are about estate planning. So there's a reason for that. A great estate plan is anticlimactic. It's boring. It's dull. It meets expectations set decades ago. And that's all. And that's the little joke I tell my clients is you pay me to keep it boring. Life will take you in other exciting directions. My goal is that your legal paperwork is the least of your concerns. And that's what we'll talk a little bit about today, the legal toolbox. And when people say, get your affairs in order, that means a little something different to anyone. And you never want to hear that from your doctor or from your kid, but we hear it. And there's that looming sense of, have I done everything I need to do to make things easier when things get tough for my family? So just to show of hands, who has an estate plan? All right. I may be preaching to the choir here. But I made a little legal toolbox document here, and it's just a very simple description of the various tools that you have in an estate plan. And if you didn't get one, if you snuck in here early, they're just sitting all out in the front along with my business cards if you have any questions. But the gist of it is, if you want to go hang a picture or if you got a leaky faucet, what do? You go find that darn toolbox in the garage that's collecting dust in the corner. Well, guess what happens when life gets tough with medical issues, when people pass away? The legal toolbox is your estate plan. And when you put together an estate plan, it's not necessarily a job. It is like buying a set of tools. And it's not a set of tools that you personally are going to use. It's a gift for your loved ones. You're saying, I spent all this money with some lawyer who I paid him with one check and I got a giant box of paperwork. Half of it, I'll be honest, I don't understand, but my name's spelled correctly and it says trust and it says will, so I think it's gonna work. And the legal toolbox though, when you need it, I always describe the estate planning side of my business is wills and trusts. What happens when I die? That's the question. The elder law side of the business is what happens if I live? And that's a question not a lot of people ask. They say, I got everything taken care of if I die. And what you've been listening to right here is really the question is what happens when I live? What happens when my money that I've been taken out from my RMDs and my Social Security no longer meets my care expenses? And that's oftentimes when people come in, and I don't typically market, a breakfast at Denny's. I tell other estate planning attorneys, when you get your clients and they have elder law issues, you send them my way. And so elder law is a distinct specialty from estate planning. A lot of your estate planners are great when you're alive and you want to make an amendment. And they're also great after you've passed away and your kids need to manage things. Where a lot of estate planning attorneys have a little gap is that middle part. I just got diagnosed with dementia. I'm doing okay now, but my doctor said I need to figure some things out. Or I broke my hip for the third time. I'm having trouble getting around. And that's where the elder law part of the business comes in. And I don't do high net worth stuff, and I don't do litigation or conservatorships. I'm just a little one-man show, and I've been working with Christy, who's my wonderful assistant, for 15 years. And all we do are the estate plans, the elder law, and then when people pass away, trust administrations and probates. But what I wanted to do is just sort of a quick review. If you have an estate plan, you probably have all these documents in there already. But there's nothing wrong with a little refresher, just to remind yourself what you got in there. And importantly, too, if you've named people, if you put together this estate plan 20 years ago or 30 years ago when the kids were young, haven't really looked at it since, it's there. It's not milk. It's not going to go bad. But the people part of that sometimes changes. Your brother, who you and your brother were buddies, you lived together after college. Well, now he's an idiot who blew his money in Vegas. Stuff like that. Or if someone's passed away, it's always good to take a look at the people part, because these estate plans, they go through generational changes. And your kids who are, raising heck when they were young are now pillars of the community, raising kids of their own. And make sure, if you think your sister wants to deal with your trust at the age of 78, it's probably the last thing she wants to deal with. That's always people often come in to do a little refresher from time to time, and just to make sure things are up to date. Most of the time, you don't need a brand new anything. You just need to polish it up a little bit. But what I drafted out here, just a little one-pager Cliff Notes version of what's in an estate plan. You have your will, and a will is great. A will says who's in charge of your estate after you pass, and it says where your who the beneficiaries are of your estate. Problem with the will is assets in your will go through probate court. There's nothing wrong with probate court, but I make really good money doing probates. 2%, $1 million estate pays 23 grand just in the lawyer fee. So most people go, well, I don't want to pay you that much. And I don't want my kids to have to pay you that much. And I say, well, then what you want is a living trust. When you have your living trust and you title your assets like your home in your living trust, that circumvents that probate process. Saves a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money. The rule of thumb I use, if you spend, $2,500, $3,000 on an estate plan, add a zero to the cost of probate. 25 grand, 30 grand. That's what they run. They don't look at the net value of your estate. They look at the gross value. Doesn't matter if you have a big mortgage. So that's how probates get paid out, is a percentage of the estate. So the way around that is your living trust. You don't have to have one, but I'll guarantee you, the people who you love and who are your beneficiaries will put a little flower on your grave saying, well, took care of business, got her affairs in order, and didn't have to spend a bunch of money on lawyers and court fees and that sort of thing. So wills and living trusts are tools that you use to direct where your assets go after death. And a little reminder, if you came to me and said, Brian, I got 100 grand in the bank, I'd say, well, you don't need a trust. If you have $184,000 or less, your assets don't go through probate. And so not everyone needs to have a trust. But say you own a house. Say, well, I bought it for 75 grand back in 1978. Well, now what is it worth? Add a zero, maybe 750,000. If you own a house, your kids or your beneficiaries, they'll appreciate you having that living trust to keep them out of probate. And that's the goal. People don't come to me when they are in court. People come to me and say, how do I stay out of court? Because every time you go to court, it adds up. And you solve a lot of problems you didn't think you had, but the lawyers tell you it's really important to solve those problems when you're at the court. So wills and living trusts help guide where your assets go and who's in charge of that process. And that living trust is really helpful for your loved ones who are going to inherit something. And then you have two powers of attorney, one power of attorney for finance, one power of attorney for health. Power of attorney means you are alive, but you have some mental issues that you're incapacitated. So some people never use a power of attorney because you were doing great Friday night, you had a nice dinner, you went to bed, didn't wake up Saturday. No need for powers of attorney. But when you pay a lawyer to do an estate plan, 90% of the work's probably that living trust. Everything else pops out real quick on the computer. So you're not really saving time or money if you kind of patchwork quilt these things together. So the goal for me is always to say, if you have a will and a trust, that handles the what if I die question. Your powers of attorney, power of attorney you'd bring to the bank so someone else could help pay your bills from your checking account or access your IRA. That's going to be titled in your personal name, not the trust. So those tend to be, pretty important jobs if your dementia goes from bad to worse all of a sudden. And that power of attorney for health is real useful at the doctors and the hospitals. If you're in a coma, God forbid, they're going to talk to your power of attorney for health. But that's also the person who's going to coordinate with the funeral home and the person who's going to get death certificates. So that power of attorney for health, it's not a financial job necessarily, but it's a lot of the heavy hitter decisions in terms of management during someone's final chapter and after. And then another term you'll hear is a post. Anyone familiar with that term? Well, you might have been in for surgery late. So the doctor, that's a one-page pink document, POLST. physician's orders for life-sustaining treatment. So if you're familiar with state plans, you get a binder bigger than this, hundreds of pages. So if you're on the surgery table, if you're getting the surgery done and your heart stops, do you think the doctor's going to say, hey, get a hold of her daughter, tell her to look on page 32 in section 8 and let me know what it says? No. POLST is a bright pink document on your hospital bed. And it really guides anything from DNR, do not resuscitates, feeding tubes. There's 3 boxes to check for I want all the care you could possibly provide, to don't provide any extra care, and basically make a good decision. Don't overdo it, something in the middle. But a DNR, doctors are always going to try to save your life. But if you have osteoporosis and they did chest compressions on you a year ago, guess what happens to your ribs? They're broken. And you've seen football players who get hit. Broken rib is no treat. You break them all, you'll feel that for months. Every time you breathe, a little reminder. So some people say, next time my heart stops, that's signal from up above, it's time. I don't want anyone doing chest compressions and bringing me back saying, hey, we saved your life and we broke 7 ribs. But doctors are always going to try to save your life because that's their job, unless you've told them, ease off the gas pedal there, buddy. And the POLST is what is an emergency document when you're right on the table and they have to make a decision. That POLST document is something you sign with your doctor. Yep. Oh, I'll get you in a second. Yeah. Yep.
I was just going to say that it's really important for you all to put it on your refrigerator, for your physician to have it, as well as your hospital of choice. Those 3 places that should go is your POLST form should be on those 3 places, as well as your loved one should have that. Whoever your healthcare power of attorney is, really important to review that with them as well.
And you may have remember a couple of years ago, a woman was living in an assisted living and she had a heart attack right in the lobby. She was going to go downtown and she was going to get on the bus. And the paramedics came, and while the paramedics were coming, the facility had her POLST on file and she had checked DNR. So when the ambulance and the EMTs arrived, do you think they started life-saving chest compressions on her? No. So make no mistake, if you fill that out because you're getting a hip surgery done and then you recover and you're doing pretty good, you may change your mind about DNRs and feeding tubes and how much care. So make sure those are updated because the medical professionals do pay attention to those. And if you've said, I want some care restricted, you want to make sure that that's current with your current wishes. Thank you much. And I'll be around. We'll do questions afterward. You can grab me.
Well, now, as you can see, there's, yeah. No, there is a lot of things that go into planning for successful aging, okay? And just listening to these people up here, you can realize how many choices you have. A little bit about me. I'm a certified geriatric care manager. My career trajectory is kind of like all over the place. I worked for the Department of Aging for years, developing social policy with Older Americans Act funding for senior centers and nutrition sites and that type of thing. I worked in home care, so that's how I became very well versed with Francesca in terms of what a caregiver is and how home care works. I worked in hospice, providing end-of-life care and end-of-life options. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided that I wanted to follow my passion, that I was young enough that I could make some choices. And I decided to found my own company called Aging Care Concierge. So I'm that professional relative, if you will. I'm that person that comes into the home to provide holistic options of care for the individual and also for their family and for their family's peace of mind. I work closely with home care to do medication management for clients who have home care, but caregivers aren't allowed to do medication management. So I do that piece. I have a couple of clients right now who I am the healthcare POA. So I'm that person that's going to make the decision on how we're going to proceed with their care. I'm that person who offers communication with families who live out of state, but want to make sure their parents are getting the best possible care they can. I go to the doctor's appointments. I facilitate that. I let the family know what's going on. I'm also the person that goes in and reviews the pulse and makes sure that it's accurate. I'm that person who goes into the home and looks around and sees that it's really no longer feasible for this family or for this person to live alone. And I go out to that care placement person and I say, hey, I think we need a plan. I think we need to look about different living options. So I'm kind of that overall professional relative who helps coordinate healthcare, who helps coordinate social activities. I have a lady in Martinez who when I visit her once a week to do her medication, I stop at the fruit stand to bring her fresh fruit because she can't get out. So each person is unique and individual, and so I kind of like to make sure that my services are individualized. I'm very big on education, and I know our doctors today will, oh, your wife has vascular dementia. Come see me in 6 months, but doesn't go into explain exactly what vascular dementia is and what is the longevity of it and the lifespan and how can we assist navigating that. So I'm the person that's going to provide that information. Or you get a diagnosis of cancer and there's 3 different treatment options. How do you decide which of those 3 to pick? Well, I'm going to make sure that you have all the information available to you. I'm not going to tell you what to pick, but I'm going to make sure that you have that information available to make informed decisions. And then at end of life care, knowing that there's hospice, knowing that we have the aid to the right to die here in California since 2016, I'm going to help facilitate that and find you your resources that you need for that. So, I'm the professional relative, okay? And I'm gonna stop there.
I think you're disregarding. I think a lot of you in this room have to navigate these horrific systems, these medical systems that are awful. I mean, even for myself having the experience, you need somebody like Lorna. And you if you're having trouble getting in or you have different physicians and you need somebody to help you navigate these systems, she's amazing. And you don't have to be febrile. You just need somebody to be there on your side to help you get through this. Or you have a tricky hospitalization. You're like going, oh gosh, now they're telling me I need this surgery and that surgery. And she's going to come in. She came in and helped a physician's family for me. And this lovely woman is, living. Her husband was a very prominent physician in this community, and she lived in her home in Lafayette. Well, the sons decided, because they live out of the area, is to go ahead and place her into a senior community. And, she has some challenges with memory, but she's still very bright and engaged and lovely and, a great lady. She really needed the support of Lorna to go to all her doctors because she has some treatment she's been going through. And the sons were like, oh, this is way too much. We can't do this. So Lorna stepped in, and not only is she managing her medical aspects of things, she's also there to be that person, that friend, and that support system for her. And, she's not that old. She's under 80 years old. That's, and somebody needs that when you have nobody here locally. So, she provides a lot of value and care and love to her, as well as give the adult children a peace of mind. So I feel like it may, just because you're maybe you're alert, you're together, you're astute, she can navigate the healthcare systems because she knows how to get through. We know how to get through because she does this as a professional. So I just wanted to say that. I feel like that's so valuable.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you. Okay, can we open it up for questions here? I want us to raise our hand. Vicky's going to come around with the microphone. She's going to repeat the question so that everyone can hear the question, and then we'll answer it to the best of our ability.
Her cost and his
Lorna,
What is
Lorna's cost
Lorna's services
and Brian. Okay, Lorna's services is private pay. I'm $130 an hour. I don't charge like a lawyer, 6 cents a minute, or no, every 6 minutes. But I will say that there are not a lot of certified geriatric care counselors in our community. The ones that are around are between $150 to $190 an hour. So I'm living my dream, I'm living my passion, and I'm perfectly comfortable with 130 an hour.
And she's available 24/7.
I flat fee my services.
None of those 6-minute increments.
I tend to be for an estate plan, 3,000 for a single, about 3,500 for a couple. That kind of includes the filing of the deeds and just one-stop shop. For a Medi-Cal job, those tend to be 6 months to a year by the time we started. And I charge a flat fee of $5,000-ish, depending on the
Just to follow up on that, if someone comes to you with already things in place, but I want to review, is that the same 3,000?
No. Yeah, it tends to be about you want a rule of thumb, $500 a document.
but reviewing the document versus.
Yeah.
I may have misunderstood what you said, but my understanding in my experience, this hospice was covered by Medicare. I cared for my mother at her end of life.
Absolutely. So hospice is covered. Hospice is a covered benefit under your Medicare. And you can pick, if you're Kaiser, you can pick any hospice organization because it carves away the Medicare benefit. And what that includes is an interdisciplinary team of professionals to come in intermittently. It's not continuous care like a caregiver taking care of you at end of life. So that's much different.
Thank you.
And we have Julie. Is she back there, Julie? Yeah, she is our doula. She's here today too. She does end of life planning and she's an end of life doula. So she's a great resource too. I'm glad she's here today and I'm glad I can see back there. So, but hospice again is that's the level of care and support. They don't do continuous. So sometimes it's misleading. And if you live alone and you're going on hospice, you're going to need to have a caregiver there with you.
Yeah, I was my mother's caregiver.
Yes,
I
that's
still talk
lovely.
With other people, I have 2 families on my street who are caring for families.
Yes.
At home.
Yes, it's a lot.
Exhausted. I said, you qualify for hospice if you're at, the last.
Yeah, and it's such an underused service, honestly.
People are, because it says that somebody's.
Some people graduate. Some
but it
people graduate.
transformed our experience. It was
Yeah.
amazing, wonderful.
The
God bless
average,
you.
thank you. The average admittance into hospice is like 17 days.
Yes. I was
Okay,
trying
that's
to-
tragic. We should be admitting hospice as soon as we get a diagnosis of a terminal illness, because it will bring so much support to the family and it'll bring so much care to the person who is suffering from a life-threatening disease. Is there another question, please?
Oh,
I was, you've all talked about being prepared. And Lorna knows I helped someone who was a casual friend who was not prepared, had nothing in place.
Mm.
It took a couple of weeks to figure out, she was retired from Kaiser. And it took another 2 weeks after that to figure out she had family. Got to have your things in place. Thank you very much. I just went on.
Thank you.
thank you.
You all hear her? Okay. There's. Do this.
Well,
So
just go.
It doesn't feel fair, but I'm going to go over here because I saw.
This is not.
I didn't know there was more than one hospital.
There are probably over 100 hospices in Contra Costa County. Under the Medicare guidelines, they must provide the same level of care. However, each hospice does it differently, and there are some hospices that are remarkable, and there are some hospices that are not. So there are some nonprofit hospices, and there are about 70% are for-profit. What I will say, if you think about a nonprofit, that is something that you can't make a profit. Obviously, you have to reinvest. But just think about those big buses that go by that have Hope Hospice plastered all over the bus. Okay, that's a nonprofit. However, they use their profit to advertise. So it's all relative as to.
Well, and I'd have to say the longest standing hospice organization here in this community was Hospice of Contra Costa that became Hospice of the East Bay. That's probably the biggest agency in our community that most people service. But like to Lorna's point, there's others, and you may have your physician or your hospital or whoever you're working with may have a preference, because there are some other great ones as well. I mean, we work with Suncrest. There's a handful that we work with. But to your point, home care is evolution to, there's so many agencies. When I started 33 years ago, there was just a few of us. Now there's a million just like us. And so you really need to vet and know who these people are that you're working with, and you have a credible reference. Absolutely.
I will get to all of you, I promise.
Question for the other Brian Riddle, about your fees. And then also, you mentioned a VA benefit. I didn't quite understand what you said.
Yeah. So my fee for you guys, there actually isn't one. It's complimentary. But the way our agency does get paid is a referral fee from the community that we end up placing the loved one at. And then the veteran guidelines, there's a program called Aid and Attendance.
I have
and
information back there.
And Lorna has information back there. But it's a benefit typically not advertised by the VA. So my dad was a veteran, Vietnam War. My mom had Parkinson's. So when I got into this industry, and if I had not gotten into this industry because I started in home care, I would not have known about this benefit. But you do have to apply. There is criteria that you have to meet in order to be eligible, but it's something to look into. But again, it's called Aid and Attendance.
And it's for the surviving spouse of a veteran or a veteran and their spouse. They need to have at least 2 ADLs, activities of daily living. The income asset test, I think, is like 140,000 right now. I have pages out there that you can take away. You need to be active, not necessarily in military duty, but active 1 day during the period of criteria of the World War II, Korean War, Gulf Persian, Vietnam, whatever. But as in Brian's case, my mother, as a surviving spouse of a veteran, every month I received $1,300 or something in her checking account, which helped me pay for her board and care at her end of life. So definitely, if you qualify, apply.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. It's not going to pay for the entire board and care, memory care, our home care, the caregivers in the home. So my mom had Parkinson's. We received approximately $1,400 a month. My dad has Parkinson's, and I believe we're receiving almost $1,800 a month for care for him.
First, I'll come back.
Hello. I have a question because you guys all spoke about with Medi-Cal this and Medi-Cal that. Isn't it Medicare?
That's a Brian question.
Oh, I don't know. I can elaborate in regards to,
Medicare and Medi-Cal.
correct, depending on, you can be disabled and receive Medicare, and you can be under the age of 65 and receive Medicare as well. So I think in reference, we're all talking about like our services, home care services are not a covered Medicare benefit nor Medi-Cal. What's covered under Medi-Cal for home care is in-home support services. So if you are low income and you have a certain income base and you're living on a fixed income, you can receive in-home support services for caregiving in the home. And a caregiver can come in depending on the level of support you need and what you qualify. They come out, they assess you, and you can get up to sometimes 20 hours a week with an in-home support service worker under Medi-Cal. But again, it's very based on your income and asset.
And I will add to Francesca's point, that's usually being paid $17 an hour by the county. Some people take that $17 and put it towards home care from like an agency like Hillendale to help supplement that care.
Or you're having a family member, also like an adult daughter, in some cases, be your caregiver and be paid to care for you.
Okay. I wanted to make a comment about board and care and skilled nursing facilities. I took care of my mom and my father. My father passed first, and then my mother passed away 4 years ago. I did not have good luck with either of those. With my mom, I needed to be there to make sure she was getting the care that she needed. She had Alzheimer's, dementia, and being changed when she needed to be changed, and stuff like that. So you really need to have a family member there, frequently.
Are you talking more specifically about the skilled nursing facility situation?
Skilled.
Yeah, and the boarding care. So in our skilled nursing facilities right now, kind of like in our home care, our assisted living world, we do have a caregiver shortage, and it spills over into our skilled nursing facilities. So we also have a CNA shortage. So when we go in to do an assessment, we may see one CNA managing 20 people at a time. At nighttime, that ratio could be anywhere from 1 to 30. So whenever my family's discharged to a skilled nursing, a SNF is what we call it, to your point, I share with my families, in order to have a positive result, you will need to be there often and advocating. It's
Excellent.
just the way it is. When it comes to the board and cares, we have approximately 225 of them in Contra Costa. So, working with one of the local referral agents, it makes a big difference. We're matching homes that can actually do that level of care. It comes down to what homes actually do have a person awake at night. Are they actually skilled at high care, two-person assist? Can they use a Hoyer correctly, properly? So I only work with, again, like 30, maybe 35% of the board and cares in Contra Costa County. The way I do my job, it's black and white. It is extremely simple. Every single person I work with is treated exactly like my mom and dad. So your loved one will not be going into a community that my own loved one would not go into. It's all about accountability. So when you work with an internet company, you have no one to go back to and say, hey, this isn't working for me. But when you work with me, I do what I call place and stay. So most referral agents, the internet ones, once they find the community, they're out of the picture. I'm in them constantly. I still tour. Things change, okay? But if there's ever a concern with a boarding care, an assisted living, or memory care, I want to be a part of that journey because you are also my eyes and ears, right? What's working, not what's not working. But I have an obligation, I have the responsibility to go to that administrator and have a conversation. So I will be advocating for your loved one first, and then for you, but I will be holding them accountable because if they don't change, then going forward, I can no longer refer to them.
Okay, because the boarding care that I had my mom in, I was referred by a place for mom.
Yep.
And now
Perfect example. Thank you.
Okay, and what would be the cost for long-term care insurance?
So depending on when you were to get it, if you have, I have a policy now, but I got it when I was 40. And I'm now 57. So I think on average, depending on, again, the level, is going to be anywhere from $140 up to $200 and something a month. And maybe somebody else has another experience. Who has long-term care right now? And what are you paying? Okay.
Year?
See, she's had it. Yeah. Any teachers in here that have CalPERS? Yeah. So that's a great policy as well. You know, Genworth, you have New York Life, you know, again, you have to, but there's so much criteria now. It's hard to get if you have diagnoses, if you have high blood pressure, heart stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Understand. Absolutely. Pre-existing conditions are definitely going to
My last question is, with the in-home care, is there separate charges on top of the hourly rate?
Great question. So,
I mean, you know, for cooking a meal, for
No.
doing laundry, for.
no. It's the level of care we're providing. Like I mentioned, it's $42 to $48 an hour. We don't charge overtime after 8 hours. A lot of our clients, like I have a little lady came home from the hospital. She had influenza. She's basically lives in assisted living and can't get out of that room. So we're providing 24/7 care support to her. Those are 2 12-hour shifts. And there's no overtime charge. We absorb the overtime. We pay our caregivers, but not every agency you know, have these policies in place. So you're not locked, you're not bound to us. There's no contracts. And if those agencies are asking you for this, I have a little lady who called me the other day and she's terrified to cancel services with a curtain agency because they threatened her. Well, you can't do that. You cannot do that. It's fee for services. You pay for the services that are rendered. You know, there's no additional costs. For us, we provide a client care manager to oversee the care, to provide an initial care plan assessment to determine the needs and the caregiver match. That's what's huge for us. We need to understand what caregiver is the best fit for you and what care needs do you have. So we can send somebody in that is hospice experienced that can actually help you in your end of life and help with the comfort medications and all those things. If you're calling these agencies and they don't provide these things, I would, you know, proceed with caution. It's not somebody I would recommend. And again, your hospital setting, your Kaiser setting has a referral list that we're on. They have other agencies there are reputable that they've vetted, as well as John Muir has a list as well. So it's really important to really go with a vetted agency.
Okay. Thank you guys so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
Brian, can you talk a little bit about what it takes to qualify currently for Medi-Cal and what the clawback looks like currently?
Repeat the question, please. Can you describe?
Yeah,
what-
let me repeat the question. So the question was, you know, how do you qualify for Medi-Cal? And then she used the term the clawback and let me just start. I always think of Medi-Cal in 3 phases: eligibility, share of cost, recovery. Eligibility, in the old days, you had to get below $2,000 in liquid assets. So then that hadn't changed since the 70s. Long story short, January 2024, they eliminated the asset test. So you could have just won the lottery, or you could be Warren Buffett, and you are eligible for Medi-Cal. Yes. So that has changed the group of people who are interested in Medi-Cal. There's no longer a look-back period because there's simply no longer an asset test. So there's no longer that barrier to Medi-Cal. On the other end, that third chapter, Medi-Cal recovery, a little bit like going to a nice restaurant. You can order whatever you want, but guess what happens at the end? You get a check. And so Medi-Cal works like that as well. All their Medi-Cal services, they keep track of them, how much they paid on your behalf. And at the end of your life, your family gets a bill. However, guess what? They can only recover during a formal probate. And which one of these documents prevents you from having to go through a probate? Living trust. So when you say, what's O'Toole doing for $5,000? I'm making sure you're getting your hand in the bear trap and out. And a Medi-Cal recovery is a nasty, nasty thing to deal with. But I've had to pay them in probate court because people just did it. They own their house. They were on Medi-Cal. They went to skilled nursing, built up $80,000 in Medi-Cal bills. And guess what? State sent a check. We send a check to the state before the judge will release the funds from the probate. So we've talked about eligibility, easy. We've talked about recovery, simple fix. And now that middle part is really the only game in town now. And that's share of cost. So share of cost is based how much money you pull in each month. The higher amount of income you have each month, the higher your share of cost each month. Share of cost is like a monthly deductible. So if you use no Medi-Cal services, guess what your share of cost is going to be? Zero. However, if you use $10,000 worth of Medi-Cal services, you want to make sure your share of cost is as low as possible. If you're married, there's some things we can do with that to minimize your share of cost. And oftentimes we can get that down to zero. So when you're talking about, how do I stay at my home? You say, well, you're going to need some in-home care. One way to kind of make that work is you say, well, I have my Medicare. That covers my doctor, hospital, pharmaceutical. But that's not going to cover in-home support. That's not going to cover some services that I very much need. So Medi-Cal, you can add that on. You never lose your Medicare. That's an entitlement program, just like your Social Security. Doesn't matter how wealthy you are, you will always have your Social Security, you'll always have your Medicare. Medi-Cal used to be a program for the poor, but it's expanded into the middle and now upper middle class for people to use. And so there's various things like, well, what about the income on my rental property? Well, guess what? The homeless guy on the corner, he doesn't have that problem. But that's why people come to me and they pay me a few bucks to handle those situations, to figure out, frankly, ways to minimize your contribution to the system, to maximize your financial stability.
One thing also I'm going to piggyback on is what we see is you don't want to impoverish a spouse that's living at home in the home that they paid for and own outright, and you have now a long-term care situation where she's also paying $5,000, I say $10,000 a month for her husband to stay in a skilled nursing facility long-term. So you can look at those assets to make sure she's secured, correct?
Right. So the idea there is Medi-Cal is sort of a system that helps out where Medicare doesn't cover you. So Medicare is not going to cover you more than 100 days at a skilled nursing facility. No one wants to be there for 100 days. Not you, not the facility, because guess what? On day 101, you're either paying on your own about $350 a day, 10, 12 grand a month, or you go on to Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal's become the go-to system to help seniors and families pay for long-term care. So the goal there is to minimize the share of cost. You're already eligible. We apply for you, you get on. We are already have your recovery protection because you got your living trust. So we want to minimize that share of costs, your month-to-month contribution.
Okay, so I have a $6,000 pension and I get $1,800 Social Security. So what would be the limit for my shared costs? Is there a limit?
So here's easy question, long answer. If you're $1,800 or less as of April 1st, April Fool's Day, if you're $1,800 or less, which is not your example, you don't have a share of cost, free of charge. You get onto Medi-Cal, you go into, if you're at home, you don't have a share of cost. If you're in skilled nursing, they're going to go after that. So you'll get your $1,800, but you have 3 hots and a cot at the nursing home. So you get your $1,800 in Social Security, you pay about $1,800 to the facility, and they cover the rest. If you're at home and you need in-home support, maybe you just qualified for 200 hours of in-home support. You can get 280 hours max, 286 or 3, I forget. At $17 an hour. Say you and your spouse are living at home, but your spouse is not doing so hot. You both want to stay at home. The spouse, you apply for Medi-Cal. If we're able, the spouse gets to keep the first $3,900 in income. And if the remaining income is less than $1,800, you got 0 share of cost. 200 hours of in-home support services at $17 an hour is $3,400 a month. The spouse can cash that in, and if they need additional assistance, you pay it forward. It doesn't solve the problem. It's not a silver bullet, but can take the edge off some of the costs that are associated with long-term care, certainly in-home support care. So if you're at 6,800, wonderful problem to have. If you go into a nursing home and you're a single person, you're bringing in, CalPERS pension, 6,800 a month. What Medi-Cal will do is they say, well, you're in the nursing home, so we're going to ask you to contribute all of that. 6,800 will continue to go into your bank account. 6,800, you write a check each month to the nursing home, and you get probably a $4,000 or $5,000 fill up from Medi-Cal. If you're at home, 6,800 is way over that $1,800 limit, right? 1,800 or below, you're free, 0 share of cost. Second, you go above 1,800, you keep the first 600, the remainder is your share of cost. So the control on Medi-Cal is not how many assets do you have. The control on Medi-Cal is how much income do you have each month. And I've had people, I got $1 million in my IRA, but I'm young enough, I don't have to take any out. But I have a very modest Social Security. You are a great candidate for Medi-Cal because you have modest income coming in each month. I've had other people go, I've never saved a dime because I worked as an air traffic controller and I have a wonderful federal pension. The money comes in, I spend it all. I say that $8,000 pension that you have each month basically disqualifies you from Medi-Cal, not because you can't get eligible. You'll be eligible, but your share of cost is going to be $7,400. So you have to spend $7,400 on Medi-Cal services before it starts kicking in to help you. So it's created some interesting winners and losers for Medi-Cal benefits.
Part of the rules.
That's just, the wonderful thing about law is that someone wrote it. 1,800, no share of cost. 1,801, $600 is yours, and they take the remaining $1,201 as a share of cost. When we get in that little gray area just above, you can deduct healthcare premiums, not healthcare expenses, but a dental plan, little pharmaceutical plan, little supplement plan. If you're at 1,900, we get a $150 Delta dental plan, gold plated, knock you right underneath, and then you get 0 share of cost. You may not use that plan, but you're using the deduction to get more benefit out of your Medi-Cal services. Yeah, but that's why people pay. So navigate it all.
The woman with the hat, brown hat, you've been very patient.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Purple. I'm colorblind. My bad.
It does look brown though.
It does.
It does look
Okay.
brown.
Thank you.
Thanks, this has been great. And someone mentioned the 2016 law about dignity to die. So it kind of points to that. If you are diagnosed with Alzheimer's and you don't want to put your family through that, I don't want to go through that. I saw my grandmother go through that. It was just not living. It was horrible for 8 years. Who do you go to help you craft some document to not go through that?
Well, first off, if you have to be alert and oriented to make any changes of documents and have capacity. So you need to be doing these things before and have your, Julie, your end of life doula, put it together for you. These are what your wishes are. Because you cannot you say you have a grandmother now that has Alzheimer's. No, I'm just saying, if that's the case, though, if you have like your daughters, all of a sudden, God forbid, you become incapacitated and can't make a decision, your daughter can't make that decision for you. You have to have this in place prior, and a physician has to come out, meet you, interview you, to even make this happen. But again, talking to, putting some things together, and I would highly recommend, getting Julie's card over here, because she's going to be able to guide you in those steps that are necessary of how you want your end of life to go. Because there's a lot of people now that say, look, I don't want to, I want this to happen. But if you can't make that decision, you have to have that in your legal documents as well, making that.
Let me chime in here.
Yes.
The law does not allow someone else to end your life.
Correct.
So no matter if you're an agent, even if you write, I want my agent to end my life on, January 12th, 2027. The only person who can engage that service is you. And at the time, you need to have full mental capacity to work with your doctor to do. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna run out of time. I was gonna.
This should be a short question. If I don't own any property, do I need a trust?
If you don't own any property, you fall under the $184,000 limit. You don't need a trust.
My IRA, so,
If your IRAs have beneficiaries, that's an off-ramp. Yeah.
No one has their hand raised right now, but just to put it out there to anyone who's participating by Zoom, please use the raise hand feature before we wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question regarding a Pulsed. My mother's 100, I recently found her pink copy. It's laminated. The hospital doesn't have a copy. Can I make, it's signed in 2019, sorry. Can I make a copy of that and give it to the hospital? The lawyer is no longer in business, so I can't go through there.
I'm not aware of any expiration date on a Pulsed, so I think you could provide.
Copy is fine.
I'd give it to the hospital. I think it would be fine. I'm not 100% sure.
Yes.
2019.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, I
He did a good job here today answering some of your questions and tweaking your brain a little bit about questions that you may have for the future. I want to invite anybody interested in joining us at the next Commission on Aging meeting. It's on March 13th, and we'll have a presentation on home match. You can join us either in person here at downstairs at 5 o'clock, or you can do it on Zoom. Our next workshop will be in June. It'll be about Alzheimer's. So please watch your Pleasant Hill Sound or watch the website. And really appreciate today before you leave to fill out your survey. We have a scan card. You can do it on your phone. We have actual pieces of paper if you want to do it manually, or you could do it online. But we'd really appreciate it because it helps us plan workshops that are relevant to our community. And so please let us know what your top 3 priorities are that you would like to see for future workshops. And then I also want to say in closing, these are my colleagues, these are my experts my go-to people. But please know that in our community, you have lots of choices. So know that there's lots of choices out there and resources. We are very lucky to live in a city like Pleasant Hill and in a county like Contra Costa County that is very wealthy in resources at this time. Who knows what's going to happen down the pipe? Just my little politics there. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
I'm just going to add to that and say thank you as well to all of you. If any of you have questions for us, our cards are out there and you can call, you can text, we're all here to help support you. If it's just a question, I'm happy to always help. All right.
She just wanted us to emphasize that we have the Pleasant Hill Senior Center here and there are a lot of resources there.
Yeah, and very much. We know Dana and we know lots of folks over there. So absolutely.